One of the things that I have regularly been told is that I also bring a lot of energy into a room, right? A lot of excitement and sort of vision and passion around. For some folks, that gives them energy. And I've also learned that for some folks, I sap energy from others. So over time, I've really had to learn how to not modulate my energy or my excitement, but to recognize in others, whether it's creating or taking away from others, so that I really can be part of bringing a team along.
I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas.
We're the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to catalyzing innate change makers to accelerate positive change. This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we highlight catalysts that are creating amazing change in the world.
In this season of the podcast, we're diving deep into the skills that make catalysts successful. And today, I am delighted to be learning from Sue Kalweit. She's a managing director at Deloitte, where she helps clients across national security create the decision advantage, which is how to use data to glean insights to make better, faster decisions. Prior to Deloitte, she retired as a senior executive from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA. At NGA, she led a culture plan and leadership development modernization program. And as the director of analysis, she led NGA's analytic capabilities and modernization program. While there, she stayed busy doing other things too. Sue was a senior champion for women in the intelligence community, and she advanced for the hiring and retention of neurodivergent teammates. She is also not just a CrossFit athlete, but close to number 100 in the world for women in her age range. She's a Disney fanatic, which I am too, Sue, so we'll have to talk about that. And a mother of 2 young professionals, a creative innovator and an empathetic leader. Thank you so much for being here today with me, Sue.
Tracy, it's great to be here, and I'm really honored to be part of your podcast today.
Oh, thank you for saying. We are delighted to have you, Shannon and I both, even though it's me today. I've been so excited to have this conversation, as you see. So I'd love to start off, Sue, to find out, how do you relate to the concept of catalyst?
Yeah, that's a great question. And quite frankly, until I started doing some research on your organization and reading your book, I didn't realize that there was a name for some of the characteristics that I routinely find myself in. One is connecting dots.
Right.
I thought of it as sort of this magic superpower. And then the second one is what you call burnout. And I didn't really realize or again have that particular name for it. So for many years, I have been encouraged to bring people along on the vision and the path that I see. And I frequently have been told that I lose people, or that folks want to be where I am, but they're not quite sure how to get there. I used to describe it as doing long division without showing my math. And from your book, I'm like, oh, there's actually a real name and sort of a real way of thinking that I didn't realize till Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out really enlightened me, I'll say.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I also was really surprised to read in the book about burnout, because I recognized the lows, but I had never thought about it as burnout. I really thought about it more as, look, I just have lost the people, they can't get along. And, I can't keep moving forward on this vision, this path alone, and just would sort of leave it. And I think you can hear in my voice that it was just that low.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really how I relate most.
When you look back at those moments and burnout as a new frame, kind of what are you seeing fresh? Because part of what I'm hearing is it may not have necessarily been your energy, but kind of the energy of the group, which I find interesting. So I'd love to hear kind of what's emergent for you in connecting these dots.
Yeah. So I'm a big E, right, on Myers-Briggs, and I definitely get lots of energy from others.
Mm-hmm.
And I also lose energy when others are feeling down, right? So I think I'm very much in tune with the emotions and the energy levels of others. one of the things that I have regularly been told is that I also bring a lot of energy into a room, right? A lot of excitement and sort of vision and passion around. For some folks, that gives them energy. And I've also learned that for some folks, I sap energy from others, right? Because there's just too much. So over time, I've really had to learn how to not modulate my energy or my excitement, but to recognize in others whether it's creating or taking away from others, so that I really can be part of bringing a team along.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting, right? And so when you revisit those moments, was your energy beginning to wane, or was it like you were tapping into the group and you realized there just wasn't like connection points in the energy? What would be happening?
Yeah, I would say that as I look back,
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily recognizing how the group was feeling at the time.
Mhm.
It was the point of feeling that we're not able to move forward.
Right.
Um, and and I'm not able to move forward because folks just weren't engaging any longer, right? Or supportive. Or I also was really fortunate that I've had people who have said, stop. I'm not with you. Um, can you? I had one of my one member of my leadership team used to say, Sue, hold on for a moment. If I'm understanding your intent, I think this is what you mean. Do I get that? Am I right? So I really appreciated having people who would sort of pull me back and have me pause for a moment before moving forward. And I recognize that I need those kinds of people as part of my team. Because again, as I look back over my career, there were way too many times that without that person who felt that they either could stop me or cared to stop me, I just would completely lose them and end up alone
Right.
and not able to move forward.
There's just so much I love about what you're sharing. One of the things that come to mind for me is we talk about, we haven't done the research. I don't know what would net, but it feels a whole lot like the catalysts that we identify have a neurodivergence, right? Which is an area obviously that you have been honored for, that you have done work for. And so when I think about your thing about, one of the most powerful things I find when we're able to name ourselves is that we can help others with us, right? And when we don't have this sense of who I am as a catalyst, like how could you possibly explain what was happening to your team? And so now, right, to be able to say, this is how I am, and I need, like you said, you need those people to say, hey, flag it if I'm getting too far ahead, flag it if the dots I'm connecting aren't making sense. So thank you so much. Of that was a gift. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Tracy's spot on. And I will say that having a language, having words to describe, and a team that understands those words, right, shares that same vocabulary is
Yeah.
so critically important to creating that kind of team dynamic.
Agreed. Totally agree. We see pretty high incidence in our catalyst communities of people that have screened for ADHD, that may be on the spectrum. And so we know that there's, kind of high overlap to what we're experiencing. But there's something so interesting, and I'm imagining we'll continue to see this more in neurodivergent research, is that kind of saying like I'm ADHD doesn't help people understand like what is the way my brain works going to do to support kind of how we are as a team. Where I find that catalyticness as a name is like, yeah, I'm gonna be out here and that's gonna feel annoying and it might push, but I will recognize that it's this. So yes, thank you for that naming. Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd love to hear, in your experience, what are one or two essential skills that have made you successful as a catalyst? And we always love the stories, right? The stories of success and the stories of, failure before we had those skills. So I'd
Yeah,
love to hear.
absolutely. So I think that the skills that I bring, the number one skill is enthusiasm, right? Creativity, energy. If I have to characterize it as one word,
Yeah.
is energy. That, even though for some people it may sap it, ultimately, what I've heard from most folks is that that energy is helping to create that vision, helping folks to see beyond what they, otherwise would recognize or
Yeah.
want, right? Where that energy and, where I've had that success is in creating way back in my career, there was an idea that we called the big idea around how do we use data. I can't think of what the word is. So let me go back. When the NGA, my organization that I retired from, was originally formed as the National Imagery and Mapping Agency.
Yeah.
And the idea was to integrate imagery data from satellites with mapping data.
Yeah.
And be able to discern then in real time, in the context of geography, what was happening on the Earth's surface, right? And the fact that NEMA, the National Imagery and Mapping Agency, was formed with imagery and mapping as two separate parts of its organization was actually pretty important, because that's how the organization operated, still as two separate kinds of data types. So the big idea was about how do we bring those data types together?
Yeah.
Right. And be able to leverage that in a more robust way for our customers, and be able to create data once and use it for many, many purposes. This was back in the early 90s or in the late 90s. It required new technologies, new way of thinking about data. And so that was all part of the big idea. And I had really brought a groundswell of folks at my level in particular around this idea, who were excited about this vision of what could be by integrating these data types. And what I missed doing was getting my senior leaders in the organization on board with that same idea. So while I had created a groundswell at my level, others above me who controlled the resources, right, and could make decisions about how to apply those resources and the future direction of the organization, were not on board and could not see the same vision. Like when I go to brief them on it, they just didn't see the same vision. And that was, quite frankly, when I hit a low point, right? Things came to a screeching halt because it couldn't be resourced.
Yeah.
So I really learned a lot from that experience, which is the importance of not only building your support at your level and below, but also the need to socialize and engage with those above you, particularly if they are responsible for aligning and controlling resources.
And if we could go back, right? Time machine, head back in. You mentioned you'd identified a set of folks. There's a groundswell. You briefed the decision makers. And so what does it look like now that we go back, if we were not just briefing, but doing the work to kind of, with your enthusiasm and creativity, bring them along? How is it different than briefing them?
So a briefing shouldn't be anything more than the formal agreement to move forward, right? If in fact that briefing is the formal agreement, that means you have spent time with each one of those decision makers, not only bringing them along in your vision, but this is more importantly, It's about listening to understand their perspective into the vision and being open to changing your vision and adapting that vision to all of those other ideas. We talked, Tracy, about the importance of diversity of perspectives, diversity of experience. Well, the senior leaders in your organization all come with different experiences and perspectives as well. And creating the opportunity space for those experiences to be included and added and help shape the vision that you're creating enriches the final solution. And when you get to the table of having to brief for agreement, everybody can see themselves in it.
You've helped me see where I've been limited in a way that I talk about this, because I'll often say, in the book we talk about tours, and then it's this idea that, after a listening tour, even a co-creation tour, you want people to have their fingerprints on it. And I realize how dismissive, kind of the way I'm talking about it is, because I love your frame as we, bring in the beauty. You and I earlier were talking about the data of the power of diversity, that it's not just help others agree with me, right, by letting them put their fingerprints on it, was just kind of the diminished way I talk about it. But you're saying, like, no, we all need to realize we come with our own point of view, and part of getting people on board is realizing that their experiences are going to make it better, and making sure you have the right people on board as you do that. It's not just the groundswell, but also the folks who will be the decision makers.
Exactly. And for me, I try to operate in the path of humility.
Right.
And I define humility in these three ways. One is continuously learning, not only formal learning, not only learning from books and magazine articles, but more importantly, learning from others, walking into a situation where everybody who I'm engaging with, whether they are more senior to me, whether they are at my same peer level, whether they are newer into the workplace, I have something to learn from them, and that I'm open to that learning. The second is psychological safety, that I've created an environment and a team environment where everybody feels their perspective matters and that they can come to the table and that they have a seat at the table, regardless of their level, regardless of their title, regardless of where they came from, what they have a seat at the table. That's the psychological safety,
right?
To give a voice. And then the third piece is an idea meritocracy. We've created an environment where everybody's ideas are needed, not just welcome,
right,
but needed. Right. And those three things, continuously learning from others, creating psychological safety, and holding true to an idea meritocracy, is truly where you get the best teaming to come together, but the best solutions and the best path forward.
Thank you. That is an unbelievably powerful formula. I appreciate that. Any other skills that you want to share with the audience that you feel have been helpful in your time?
So one of the things in your book that you talk about is the need to take care of yourself, right? And, similar to your book, I always talk about the triangle, right? I talk about a triangle like this, where one side of the triangle is relationships you have with your family, right? The other side of the triangle is relationships you have with your coworker. And the bottom of that right triangle is a relationship with yourself.
Ooh.
And when any one of those relationships breaks, the triangle falls. In most mentoring conversations that I have with folks, the side that breaks is the bottom, where the triangle falls in on itself, because we don't think about taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think regularly about taking care of myself. This is why CrossFit is an important part of my being. I always say that I started CrossFit for the fitness, but I stay for the community. And the community is really a large part of what keeps me well, right? My community, my CrossFit community keeps me honest, right? And accountable to showing up. My CrossFit community challenges me and supports me. Like there's never a failure. There's only success.
Right.
Right. So while I'm in the process of getting fit in class, I'm also in the process of being supported for anything and everything that I do. And CrossFit also includes a nutrition component. So I follow a very healthy nutrition and diet along with my exercise. Sleep is an important part of the whole CrossFit phenomenon. So I'm very careful about the sleep that I get. I do yoga every day as well, just to keep flexible, because the mobility and flexibility is an important part of being able to move well. And so those elements of who I am, that part of fitness and wellness and health and nutrition, I think also and to what your book says, contributes, right, to my catalyst nature.
I love that triangle. That is such a powerful model, and I hadn't heard that. Thank you. And I didn't know that CrossFit, like often when we talk about how do you, find the things that'll be useful, we have this long list of things. The top is, sleep, exercise. And what you're like is just make it CrossFit. And then all of those pieces come up. I had no idea that
Yeah,
it was so holistic.
so many people think that CrossFit is just like lifting heavy weights, right? That's what they think about it. But CrossFit is so much more than that. And as I said, it's nothing without the community,
Right.
which is about the accountability. But there's absolutely an important nutrition, sleep, wellness part to CrossFit as well.
And I love, that you're, sharing with, like you said, the people you mentor, this idea of that's often the piece that breaks, and that you have such a powerful story of how you have strengthened that part of the triangle.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely. And typically, we get into conversations around, but I don't have time, not me, but whoever I'm mentoring. But I don't have time for that. I'm like, let's talk about your time. Right. And let's talk about what you can fit in. There's always the opportunity to fit in some aspects of wellness. You have to make it a habit.
That's it.
And this is the important part, right, of changing habits.
Right. Loving all of it. So when we bring it to today, Sue, what are you finding is your biggest challenge as a Catalyst leader?
Yeah, I think my biggest challenge is that one of making sure I'm bringing others along. Right? My excitement, my enthusiasm, my energy, I still find pushes me out ahead of others. I have absolutely learned to, when I'm forming teams, to start the team forming by saying that about myself, by saying, I know that I have a tendency to get out ahead of everybody else. I get excited, I get this vision, and I need you to pull me back. I need you to challenge me and to question me. So I've learned to really be very transparent about who I am and to ask for help.
Yeah. If you had to give people one piece of advice in this area, because this is really one of the biggest challenges that Catalysts have, what would you tell them?
Be who you are and let others know who you are.
Why the be who you are? I can make all kinds of stories, but I'd love to hear what brought that forward for you.
So over the last several years, I've become a big fan of neuroscience, right? And the power of the brain. And what I have learned is that when we try to be who we're not, when we mask in any way, shape, or form, that is using brain power. Your brain is constantly thinking, do this, don't do that. Do that, don't do this. Well, if it's thinking that, it is not solving hard problems. It is not bringing new ideas to the table, or you're missing a whole lot of brain power to do that. And I want and need 110% of every single person on the team. And therefore, I need you to be who you are so that your brain can be fully engaged on what we're doing.
Yeah. I cannot tell you how many times we've had conversations with Catalyst that talk about the need to feel like they're hiding, or that they're playing smaller, or, you know, that they aren't jumping ahead. So like my body is goosebumped everywhere as you bring this forward. It's like a small statement and yet a really big piece for this community. Whew, thank you.
Yeah.
And I love the frame, because this is the call to action for Catalysts of like, don't do it, be who you are, right? But like, don't do it because you're not actually doing the thing that you feel called to do, which is solve problems.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. If your brain is too busy worrying about, am I dressed right? Is my hair combed right? Is my facial expression right? Am I speaking the right way? Are my hands in the right place? I mean, all those kinds of things. Your brain is not focusing on what what I really want from you, which is your ideas, your creativity, your innovation.
And it's not to say there's not opportunities, because you're calling this as the challenge and the space you grow, but it's that combination of tell people how you are, the humility and the readiness to listen in it, the commitment to psychological safety. So if I am kind of running to a place that makes you feel bad, right? It's all of those things together that create the power of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Our 3 rapid fire questions. Would love to hear, what's one thing you do to be ready for a big meeting?
Yeah. I always review my slides and I make notes on a little yellow sticky on the main points that I want to remember. I typically find that if I do that, I don't need to refer to them because my brain just makes that connection. But that's, you know, what are the 3 things that I want to say on each slide?
And your favorite way to spend a free day?
Oh, at the gym.
Oh, really? Like, is that you're like, free on Saturday, let's go?
Oh yeah. Like if I can spend 2 to 3 hours at the gym, I love doing that.
How do you feel when you come out of the gym? Because it's got all these beautiful components I now know.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's when I'm at the gym, it's the only thing that I'm thinking about, so it's very freeing for me.
Oh, that's nice. All right. Favorite famous Catalyst, alive or dead, and why?
Yeah. For me, it's the Imagineers of Disney. Yeah. So I'm a huge Disney file. And what I love most are watching the stories about how the Imagineers created different attractions and conceived of the different parks around the world in order to suit the culture of those. So 2 of my favorite stories. One is the meeting they had with the elevator manufacturing company when they were conceiving of the Tower of Terror ride attraction. And, you know, elevators are meant to go up and smoothly come down, not drop. The Tower of Terror drops. So they had to talk to this elevator manufacturer about how can we make this elevator drop fast. That was like a wow, like we don't do that kind of thing. But they worked on doing it. So the pulley system now that they use in order to make the Tower of Terror that thrill attraction that it is, totally like the creativity for that. The second is how Shanghai Disneyland was built to be authentically Disney and distinctly Chinese. And one of the key features that really sticks with me about that vision that Bob Iger had was the positioning of the carousel. So uniquely at Shanghai Disney, the carousel is in the center of the park. And this is because the Chinese are typically multi-generational households. And they wanted a place where grandparents could be with grandchildren while parents or older children went off to the different lands. And then they could come back and see each other. And for me, that's just like a really so creative and so innovative that the carousel was Walt's favorite attraction, right? A very powerful attraction. So they had to have it. And the fact that that's the authentically Disney piece, right? And where they placed it was distinctly Chinese for that. So that's really the Imagineers thought of that.
As we wrap up today, Sue, what is your call to action for our listeners?
Yeah, my call to action is wrapped up in 2 quotes. I'm a big quote person.
Okay.
And these are 2 favorite quotes from Walt Disney. One is, it's fun to do the impossible. So do it. And second, when you believe in a thing, believe in it all the way, implicitly and unquestionably.
Will you read the second one again for me?
Yep. When you believe in a thing, believe in it all the way, implicitly and unquestionably.
And the combination of those 2 is so resonant in my body. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
It has been such a great pleasure to spend this time with you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for chatting with me. Thank you for what you're doing in the world.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be part of your show and for the conversation. It was really a lot of fun, Tracy.
I'm glad it was fun for you too. And thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to accelerate positive change, go to our website at www.catalystconstellations.com. Be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out. And if you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way.